updates. But hi and welcome to our November general meeting. We will have a few announcements, a lot of links in chat, and then Dr. Browning is here and very excited for her talk. We'll have a few questions and then we're going to wrap up right at noon because we have another meeting on the same Zoom link, which is the research subcommittee meetings. More on that as well. If you're interested, I highly recommend staying back and we'll have small breakout room discussions. So it's a more intimate setting to talk to other NHERI GSC members. But the first thing is that there is a call for abstracts from EMI. We have been in touch with EMI and are hoping to collaborate with them more, have more of a student NHERI GSC presence there. So hopefully we'll be getting more regular updates from them, but submit an abstract for the EMI 2025 conference, and abstracts are due by December 1st. So you still have more than around 2-ish weeks to submit. And there is scope for interdisciplinary submission, especially in this last category for sustainability and resilience of civil infrastructure. So it's not just engineering focused, and there's a lot on data and methods and computational techniques. There's also a student competition, which again, I feel like is an opportunity for NHERI GSC members to participate in. Check out their website. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to put you in touch with one of the subcommittees that we have been chatting with on the side. But again, yeah, let us know if you have any questions and would like to talk to folks at EMI. There are also other conference opportunities open at the moment. For some, the abstract deadline's just closed, but you can still register. There are others where the abstract deadline is still open. And while I'm chatting, feel free to take a screenshot of this page. The ones in yellow are open, or a deadline, for example, for the natural hazards workshop will be announced soon. And all of these conferences are in 2025. This next page, again, if you want to take a screenshot, feel free to do so. All of these abstract submission deadlines are closed, but registration is still generally open almost till the conference happens. A few of these are in 2024, a few in 2025. I know a lot of us are going to EGU and hoping to meet up there in person, so more to come on that as well. And then the RSR meetings, which are the research subcommittees, which are new and which are trying to figure out and make different communities within NHERI. And today, right after our main meeting, we'll have a 30-minute meeting where we'll divide into two breakout rooms. One will be the social science subcommittee led by Erin, where we'll have a discussion on the 50th annual natural hazards workshop. For more context, a lot of us were volunteers there last year. It was a great time. We got to meet each other in person. So talking more about that and how we can do that again this upcoming year. And then another parallel discussion on simulation and computational methods, where there be a presentation by Pooria, and then discussion for activities that you'd like to see come out of a research subcommittee, which could be going to conferences together, it could be writing a paper together. There's a lot of flexibility and directions that one can take. So it's a good time to attend these discussions. And that'll be right after, led by Pooria, who's the chair of research. Next Friday, we also have a panel on a workshop essentially on careers in industry and government sectors. We'll also have one on academia later, early in 2025, but this one is on next Friday at noon Central Time. Please, please, please register. Otherwise, you will not see a Zoom link, and the registration links and everything are being thrown into chat as I talk by Robin. So do register. You must have seen this on social media. If you need the link, please email me or Robin or Richard, and we will get the link to you. And there will be opportunity to ask your own questions. So we have a few questions prepared, but we also are keeping time for you to ask questions. And all of these people are NHERI GSC alums in some sense or another who are working in industry now. And then we also have the NHERI Summer Institute deadline coming up. Highly recommend going to one of the information sessions if you are interested in submitting an application, where Robin will essentially tell you what the Summer Institute is, and any GSC member who's attended 2 meetings between August 1st, 2024 and February 23, 2024 is eligible to apply. You are completely funded to attend the Summer Institute and learn about proposal writing and NHERI as someone who went this past year, I cannot highly recommend this enough. So please talk to me as well if you want to know more about the Summer Institute. And then finally, we have our speaker for the month of November, which is Dr. Joanne Browning, who is the interim vice president for research at the University of Texas at San Antonio. She's also been the dean for the College of Engineering and Integrated Design and is the David and Jennifer Spencer Distinguished Chair in Engineering since 2021. She's won so many awards. She's been a professor for the last 16 years, the San Antonio Business Journal Women's Leadership Award. That was really cool when I read your bio. And her research interests are structural engineering, earthquake engineering, and engineering in reinforced materials and concrete design. And I'm going to pass on the screen to you so you can tell us more about NHERI.
So much, Harmon. That's really nice of you. And it's good to see you again, even if it's just
Yeah,
virtually.
yeah,
Um, Thanks for giving me time today. This is one of my very favorite groups. This is something, a group that was born out of ideas from the whole community in NHERI, wanting to have more support and pulling people in at all stages of their careers in natural hazards engineering. And the impact that you've had and the community you've built and the type of dissemination you're doing with your results is truly phenomenal. So thank you for all the work you do. And we know it's completely volunteer, and we're looking for ways to help provide better resources and support for your whole group. But you've made the case for it because you've been so active and busy. So thank you for all that you do. Um, when I was putting together this presentation today, I knew that the level setting might be a little different. I knew that people would have all different kinds of backgrounds, and I'm going to talk about NHERI history and structure and resources, and some of this is probably going to be known to you in some ways. But I'm hoping that there will be gaps that I fill along the way. And then I'm also hoping that there are people that just didn't know some of these things existed or where it came from or why it's this way. So I would love it if, as I'm talking, and I'm going to keep a view in front of me here. My screen is to the left, so every time I look over here, it's just because I'm making sure I'm on the right page. But I'm going to try to keep a screen open here as well, so I can get a view of some of your faces as we're going through. If you have a question you think of and you want to just put it in the chat, I probably won't answer it in the middle of my presentation, but it'll help me when I get to the end. I can make sure I answer. And if I don't have the answer, then I'll find it and we'll get it back to you. Okay? Is that good? All right, lots of nods. So here we go. History, structure, and resources around NHERI. But let's start with, why do we want NHERI? And Harmon, this is a slide that I showed at our Summer Institute this past year. And so you may recognize that. But I think all of you are somewhat familiar with some of the reasons why we need to have this combined infrastructure to look at mitigating these types of hazards. This is a graph that shows, and it's from NOAA, both the number of events here on the left side, and that's noted by the bar chart, as well as the cost in billions of dollars related to those events. And that's the lines here in several different ways of presenting it. I like to look at the 5-year average costs myself to get a feel, because we know that events are going to peak in some years and some years they'll have less. But I think what strikes you from this is not only are we seeing an increased number of events over the years, and these are large events, but the costs, and these are in hundreds of billions of dollars, are also increasing for us. And so as a society, when we're thinking about how do we make sure that we're maintaining these vital resources and infrastructure for all of our people, this is something we've got to look at. How do we maintain this? How do we keep this going? But of course, it's not just the costs. It's also people's well-being. Uh, this is a really nice plot that was in this article published by Markavita, Walsh, and Halagati in Nature Sustainability back in 2020. So it's a few years old, but it's still very, very relevant. Of course, we've had a lot of inflation lately, so maybe you would even put these at a higher cost. But they looked at a hypothetical 7.2 magnitude earthquake on the Hayward Fault, so in the San Francisco area. And they were really interested in loss of well-being. So not just the costs of rebuild, but let's also think about loss of shelter, access to healthcare, clean water, areas that have to do with connectivity losses or electrical losses, gas, other types of things that you need. And you can see that even for this one hypothetical event, 7.2 magnitude, which is strong, right? But not, it usually makes the news and there'll be things that happen, but it's not like a 9 or an 8 that we've been seeing in the news over the last decade or so. Can be in the billions of dollars in equivalent cost for our well-being. So there's a real call for us to look at how can we collaborate as a community to help mitigate these types of losses. And that's really where the first ideas on how do we build some really unique facilities to look at this came about in the early 2000s with the George E. Brown Jr. Network for Earthquake Engineering Simulation, or otherwise known as NEES. Before NEES was built in 2004 or so, the experimental facilities that we used were at individual universities, and we were continually learning more about the demand side in earthquakes. And George E. Brown was a representative out of the Los Angeles area, so he was very much aware of what happened around Loma Prieta, but more even Northridge, you would say. And thinking about the loss of life and the damages from that, how could we look at mitigating that into the future? So his push was, let's build some really unique facilities that allows us to get answers to the response side. We got a lot more on the demand. Now, how are our structures responding? How is the infrastructure responding? Now, this network was built of 16 different sites around the country, all focused on earthquake engineering, but it was one award out of NEES, out of NSF. And the award was hosted by a group called NEES Inc. on the West Coast for the first 5 years, and then Purdue University out of the last 5 years. There was one award with a lot of sub-awards that went to these really unique facilities. And there's some that you'll recognize here. So there's the Tsunami Wave Basin, and you'll see the UCSD Shake Table was first built out of this. Lehigh is in here, the mobile shakers out of UT Austin, some really unique things. But there were others that these facilities still exist. We invested in the infrastructure, but they didn't continue into the NHERI site. So you can still look around you and see, this is a university that really has some unique capabilities. Like Nevada Reno, they have a number of shake tables in series, so you could build quarter scale bridge structures and excite the piers independently. And so you could look at how an earthquake would proceed across and the types of gaps and the types of stresses and strains that would occur there. There's the MASS facility, University of Minnesota, really large, strong wall system there. In Buffalo, it had a very large soil box along with their shake tables. So it's really interesting if you go back and look at the history, these types of facilities still exist. Santa Barbara had a distributed seismological network that they could gain a lot of information there. And I think that's kept up through SAGE and GAGE, which is another peer network of ours. But the next generation, after this was ending in 2014, it became apparent that we really shouldn't just be looking at earthquakes. And so the next generation was to bring in natural hazards in general. Turn that off. There we go. And so the mission of NHERI, our Natural Hazards Engineering Research Infrastructure, was to enable research and educational advances that can contribute knowledge and innovation to improve the resilience of our civil infrastructure against, earthquakes, but also tsunamis, windstorms, and storm surge. And so our network now, which many of you have probably seen this wheel, exists of a number of awards that now spread across all of those types of hazards. And so just in case you're not overly aware, these are now individual awards to each site. And so we have a network coordination office at Purdue University whose role is to help pull them all together and help us stay a community. And that's where Robin and I work out of. We're both in the NCO, the Network Coordination Office. But at Berkeley, they have this amazing simulation center known as Sim Center. Texas has a couple of sites, UT Austin, I should say. One is for the cyber infrastructure known as Design Safe, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. Lehigh, with their large hybrid simulation testing facility. Florida with the boundary layer wind tunnel, really cool ways of changing those boundary conditions. Florida International University with the wall of wind. UCSD's large scale shake table, which of course was in Nice, but they've really advanced it in the last 10 years that we've had NHERI and added new capabilities. The geotechnical centrifuges out of Davis, the mobile field shakers out of UT Austin, of course, the large flumes in Oregon State, and they've also all these. If they were previous awards, they've all added capabilities. So I don't want to sell anyone short, but absolutely there as well. Washington came on with a new facility for reconnaissance. Really, really cool equipment that you can use to go after an event and record unique data that can really help move your science along. And then not necessarily part of NHERI, but such a close and strong collaborator of ours is Converge, which deals with social sciences and interdisciplinary resources out of Colorado Boulder. A really great team that we work closely with. And after large events, they also help to coordinate the response teams that we have out of, they're called EARS, extreme event reconnaissance groups. And there's one for structures, and there's ones for geotechs, and there's one for all different areas. And they coordinate all those groups to go out and collect large amounts of data around large events. And so there's also, you'll see those, I just described the ones that have the blue dashed lines. There's also these yellow dashed lines, and these are newer facilities that have planning grants, but aren't constructed yet. And so Florida International University has worked with a number of PIs around NHERI and also related to NHERI to put together a site that not only has the large winds, but also can bring in surges of water or wave events. And so we can have cascading events and combined events. And Iowa State University is looking at building a facility with wind that would be more like tornado style winds or strong downbursts. So those are both unique facilities that have planning grants. I attended a workshop from Florida International University with Niche a couple weeks ago, and I believe their scale right now is to be online somewhere in like 10 years. So it's going to be a while, but it should be a really fantastic facility. And so when you think about what the next generation of this might look like, we're coming on the end of 10 years of NHERI. We just found out in August that we're going to be renewed for another 10 years. And 4 of the awards are in a renewal phase. So that means we put in an application, and if we do a good job, we actually go through and stay in NHERI. And those are the Network Coordination Office, the Simulation Center at Berkeley, Design Safe out of UT Austin, and the Reconnaissance Facility out of Washington. And the rest are all going to recompete. And so we may have just the same number of facilities in the next round of NHERI. We might have an expansion of facilities. It's a really interesting time in NHERI to see what kind of capabilities we'll have into the future. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we do through the Network Coordination Office. Yeah, I'm going to touch on these various sites in some ways, especially around Design Safe and so on. But for the individual capabilities at each of the other sites, I trust that you would be able to go and look at that yourself. But I am going to give you some guidance on how to do that too. So our vision as the NCO, as I said, is we're the focal point. We try to help lead this multi-hazards research community and get more out of the individual parts. We do things like international relationships. So you can see in this picture on the right, we have a strong collaboration, an MOU with eDefense in Japan. They have a really large shake table that they can shake, 12-story full-scale buildings. And we like to do awards with faculty that can and researchers that can do augmented tests with those. Or we're also looking at ways that their researchers can use some of our unique capabilities here as well. We have a workshop coming there in Japan in January, actually. But overall, we provide leadership, so we're bringing the communities together. We coordinate those NHERI components for synergistic work. We also help with the research part to make sure that there's clear and fair access to those experimental facilities. And we help to build that roadmap with the community on what high impact research should look like. And we do a lot with education and outreach. So that's the workforce development, the pipeline, the pathways that we're helping to build for people to realize how much of an impact they can have in natural hazards and also in disseminating that impact. I'm not going to go through all the pictures here, but you'll see some familiar faces, I hope. We have Robin in here, our fearless leader. We're so glad to have her. Julio is our PI over at Purdue. We do a number of things. We bring together an independent advisory council, the NIAC, the Network Independent Advisory Council, and they are leaders in natural hazards engineering. So some of them are practitioners and research that are independent of all the NHERI components, and they give us advice. They look at what we're doing. They make sure that what we're doing has impact and that we are having the outcomes that we intend to have. And they give us advice on things. It's a great resource. So the NCO organizes that. We organize a council of PIs from NHERI. Everyone has a voice in, and we work together collaboratively to think of how we can have impact in the coming years. We have a user forum, so that brings in the people that are actually using the facilities to help organize assessments, but also talk about things that we could do better and so on. We have educational pieces I'll talk more about later. We do pieces around communication that I'll also talk about. We have liaisons to the NCO to each of the facilities, so we're always staying in touch of what their individual needs are, some of their challenges, their opportunities, making sure we're feeding those into the communications pieces and also into the user forum. We have a group that focuses on technology transfer, and these are leading researchers that work with code agencies and other ways that we can take research and put it into action, and work a lot with early career researchers on understanding how the research can be implemented that way. We have a science plan that I'll talk about later, and of course we also do things around operations and technology as well. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the resources you can find in Design Safe. I see a number of faces up right now. Can you just raise your hand if you've been through Design Safe pretty well already on your own? See a couple of kind of twinkly, yeah, and a couple of hands up. Oh, thank you. Yeah, good. Good. I'm going to fly through this a bit. I still think it's worth it for me to just make sure everyone's aware of all the pieces that are in Design Safe, which is our web interface for NHERI. It's hosted at UT Austin and kind of went with a more generic term of Design Safe as we didn't know how NHERI would evolve over the years. So we'll always have this to come back to. I'm just going to go through this menu site with you really quick. And instead of doing it live, because I know connections won't work, I just made some screenshots. So we'll start with what's under Design Safe. So when you get in here and you click in under the using part, you can find information on the data depot where all the experimental data is stored. Because NSF has requirements that if you're going to use their funding to do research, you have to make it publicly available. And so this is how we do this, through the data depot. So when you're working on your own individual research, there might be opportunities for you to go in and say, well, maybe there's a data set in there that would complement what I'm doing, or look at it from a different way. There's always the issues around the metadata and how did they collect it? How is it going to be used later? But that's why we're a community to help you put in touch with those people as well. There's going to be different tools and applications on how to use your data or how to communicate better. There's a reconnaissance portal for that data in particular. There's user guides in here and use cases. When you go under the Learning Center, you'll see some training opportunities that are in there, things that have been recorded in the past. So if you might be individual training on how to use certain sites or how to use certain tools and so on. So that's a great resource place. There'll be educational resources. A number of those you'll see come from NEIS. And so if you see NEIS on there, you'll understand, oh, that was from the earthquake engineering side. They're not that they're bad or wrong. A lot of them are for educational purposes that are K through 12 targeted, but it might give you some ideas as well if you need to do some outreach pieces and so on. And so I encourage you to look through that. This is where we have our link to our Summer Institute that I'll talk a little bit more about. And I see that you've been advertising it, so maybe you've talked about it as a group already. We have a fantastic program under research experiences for undergraduates that started in NEIS, and we've continued in NHERI, and make sure that we get undergraduates to all the sites that are working with you guys, I'm sure, in some cases, and other graduate students and their mentors. The Graduate Student Council, you have a landing page there. So if you haven't had a chance, you should go and see what's on there. There's Computational Academy. Sim Center has some learning tools as well. When you go into facilities, there's a link to all the individual experimental facilities, but there's also the Sim Center, the Rapid for reconnaissance, Converge is the social science one, Design Safe, of course, is their own individual, and that's where you also find us, the Network Coordination Office. Under NHERI community, more sources for understanding where the community is moving and the different types of things that are happening, such as the calendar. That's where you can find the user forum. So if you're interested on who's in there, if you want to give some input at some point, that's where you can also find our technology transfer committee. Remember that because I'm going to show you something later that they've developed, and that's where you can find it. Um, Design Safe Dataset Awards. So they do their own awards. That's kind of fun. Hybrid Simulation Collaboratory, social media, if you want to find how to connect with us. And also, if you're going to make a presentation sometime and you want to talk about what's happening in NHERI or what happened in the Graduate Student Council, we have a branding toolkit there, and that's where you can go and find all the logos that you need to put on there to be official. Under news, you'll have, of course, the latest news. That's where you'll find our newsletter, different publications that are coming up. And we also have a podcast known as Design Safe Radio. So you'll hear from individuals that are doing their own research or are making their impact in unique ways. And of course, there's always the help button, and that's where you can submit tickets of ideas and things that you need to find. And they're very good at following up on that. So I want to touch on what the NCO does to help with access and funding. And so if you notice that under the facilities, if I go back here a bit, and you click on the Network Coordination Office, you will find a opportunity to go under there and click on the facility dashboard. And what we do is we help to make sure people understand who's currently scheduled to use the sites. And then when you're ready and you want to do experiment at a site, we also help with requesting use of that site. And so our goal is to make sure that this is equitable, that people can find it, they can have access to it, and that we're as efficient as possible to move people through and make sure there's room for more people to use those sites. And so if you are working as a graduate student and you're working as a part of a team and you just got an NSF award or another type of award and you want to use one of these facilities, you would start on this facility scheduling dashboard, and you can see, you can filter by the different locations and see what's currently out there. You can get an idea of where it's already scheduled and start to get an idea of, well, where would I want to do my experiment and when could I do it? And you would click on here to request a new project at a site. And when you click on that, it's going to take you to this facility project request landing page. And what it tells you is you have to fill out this site utilization request form, or SURF, which I guess is nice for the West Coast people. And there's not actually a link to it. So I've been trying to go and ask them, well, how do you find it quickly? I just went in and clicked on the little search button and put in surf, and it popped up immediately and I found it. But this is not an active link. So if you want to use that right now, you just need to search for it. But there's some really useful things here that I want to bring your attention to. First of all, this has the link to all of the site managers at all of the facilities. They are so fantastic. They know they've fielded so many questions on how to use their sites, what you're going to. They'll have tools that they've developed just for their site on building a budget, or on, the tips for using our equipment, or where you're going to want to stay when you come, or how you can link up to do a virtual presence during your experiment. So these people are a wealth of resource. Now, along with that, they also give you contact to their Slack communication. This is where they are continually talking about challenges or opportunities or things that are coming up. So you can also get on there and pose some questions there, and then get a number of people to respond to you. They also, of course, have the link back to each experimental facility site. It's going to be the same ones you've seen before, but it's there. And they also, and if you find that surf page, what you'll be doing is you will be filling out a request form that looks something like this. And so it's going to need, to ask, is this a funded project or not? What's the title of your project? Who is the PI? What's the home institution, the project type, the agencies that are funding it, and so on. And this is going to help those sites um, really integrate you into their whole overall protocol. They also have this scheduling protocol that we've developed with all of the sites that shows you how a typical project will go through. So if you've never done it before, you'll understand the kind of phases there are, the training that you'll need to go through, how you're going to help, plan your experimental design. That might actually help you before you even write the proposal, right? When you're ready to construct your specimens and do the testing, and then how you are going to upload your data and the demolition and so on. So there's a lot of information on there if you're writing your first proposal. Another resource, when you go into the NHERI community, you click on the calendar, you can see some of these things. I loved, Harmon, how you were going through all these different opportunities for people to get involved and to share their research, and it's so important to network. You can find some of these here. Also, if you are planning one yourself and you're like, oh, it's not on the calendar, get it on there so other people will see it. So I really encourage you to look at that. We look a lot in NHERI on how are we making large outcomes to grand challenges? How are we amplifying broader impacts? And we do this in a number of ways. One of them is going to be, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this just briefly, on the science plan. And this is where we talk about what are the grand challenges we're trying to conquer as a community. But it's also a great place to go back and either find ideas for research you want to do in the future, check and see if other people find this valuable because it's an idea that you already have, or is it something that hasn't been even brought up before? And then maybe that's something that you can gain some momentum on. I mentioned to you our technology transfer group. I'm going to show you a little bit on that as well. Our communications team, of course, building community with the newsletters and our podcasts, and a number of things that we do in education. So let me just touch on a few of these. Starting with the science plan. This is really what we've done to work with all of the NHERI community. And so this was building workshops. I think we had like 3 different workshops for each of these science plans that have come out, versions 1, 2, and 3. The 3rd edition just came out last October. And we've had workshops where people come together and they churn over the issues and what are the most pressing issues we need to solve as a community. And the 3 grand challenges that they've identified in this version of the science plan are the characteristics of isolated and compounding natural hazards that have the potential to damage civil infrastructure. And you'll notice that we're bringing in wildfires here as well. The next version of NHERI may have more types of natural hazards in them. Assessing the vulnerability and the adaptive capacity of our civil infrastructure and social systems, and creating technologies and tools and human resources to support the design, construction, retrofit, and operation of our secure and resilient civil infrastructure. So where can you find the science plan, you might ask? If you go under the NHERI facilities, you click on the Network Coordination Office, it'll bring you to this landing page. And then under that landing page, on the left-hand side here, whoops, yeah, here it is. You click on the NHERI Science Plan and it brings it up and you can just download it right away. Okay, it's a great resource for you. We also have this technology transfer committee, which I told you about, brings all these really knowledgeable people in code design and other types of implementation to of research. And they're all volunteers, but they're really fantastic group. One of the things they just put together was a portal where you can go in now, and this is on Design Safe as well, and you can find all of the grants that are related to NHERI, things that have been at experimental facilities or have named independently how they want to use a NHERI resource. And so this is a great way, again, for you to go through, find out what people are working on, understand where the next impacts could be. We're using it a lot to send it out to and work with code agencies on discovering places that there's going to be information that help them address some of the challenges that they're seeing. Of course, we have this amazing ECO committee with representatives from everywhere. Robin helps to lead this. And the NHERI ECO committee puts together a number of things. The REU program that I mentioned, the Summer Institute, of course, your Graduate Student Council. This is where the birth of the Graduate Student Council started, was from ideas coming from the ECO committee and deciding on webinars and other types of learning resources. Just want to make a plug for the Summer Institute. We do bring graduate students to this. And we have a number of goals at the Summer Institute. It's a 3-day, wonderful, fun event in San Antonio in June when it's like, really, really hot, but we still have a lot of fun. And we always do something fun, go to the Riverwalk or go up in the Tower of the Americas or do something fun like that. But so number one is to build community. We want you to feel a part of NHERI. Number two is to build skills. And we focus on writing proposals and generating research projects, but also learning about NHERI resources like we're doing today. So you're going to hear all about the facilities and the other things that you can get a hold of and have more hands-on experience and to help build your own network. Okay, so it's a great experience. We have so much fun. And this being our ninth one, I think, or eighth or ninth. I think we had to miss a year because of COVID, but it's going to be better than ever. And it's also NSF's 75th birthday. So we're going to be doing some fun things around that. Really want to encourage you to go check in, make sure that you're signed up for our newsletter, and then check in on some of the podcasts. That's on that last piece. And guys, I think I've talked long enough. That's the end of what I have, but I would really love to answer any questions that you might have. And again, if I don't have the answer, then I will certainly try to either point you towards someone who knows, or I'll just find out and I'll come back and email Harmon and Robin and we'll get it out to you somehow. Okay. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I don't see any questions in chat, but if anybody has questions, feel free to unmute, raise your hand, put questions in chat. We're more than happy to take questions.
I also want to make sure you get to your next meeting. So we don't want you to overrun at all. It sounds like a really important meeting.
Thank you. I think to get us started, I had a question. So now that the renewal is coming up, what are some directions you personally see research going into, other ideas for maybe new kinds of equipment coming up? Yeah, where do you see the future for the next 10 years?
That's a great question. I will tell you this, that we do know that one of the restrictions on applying for the next phase is that uh, there's not going to be funding in the next phase to build new facilities. They will be existing facilities that we think about bringing into the network. Now, we do have existing facilities that have to do with tornado winds. We have fire facilities through other government agencies. And so I think wildfires, tornadoes, and large downbursts of wind are areas that we haven't covered as much in the past. But we're also going to be looking at, Harmon, creating more relationships internationally so that we can help people work with other facilities that have been built around the globe. The UK has some really cool facilities that are focused on digital twinning and looking at communities. So we do that here as well, but some unique aspects on community resilience that I think could come in there. Western Ontario has a really nice wind facilities as well. So we're not only going to look at what can we build new, but what can we partner with and how can we find some easier ways to connect and get our researchers there and bring their researchers here as well. So,
Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah.
yeah, it is. It is.
Are there any other questions?
Joanne, I did have a question. You mentioned there's fire facilities that you're
Mm.
interacting with. What are the main ones for those? I work in fire engineering. That's
I want to make sure I get this right. I think I'm going to say it's a NIST facility up in Pennsylvania. Let me do this right though.
Thank you.
We- it's either, let me make sure I get this right.
Now, are these facilities also competing for or up for renewal as well?
The ones outside of NHERI?
Yeah, or is
I
that some other grant thing?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to make sure I find that and get that to you later because I don't want to waste everyone's time while I do a search
Sure,
for it.
sure. Yeah.
I've actually been there. I just can't remember who sponsors it. When I was there, it was like 20 years ago. Um, they are independently sponsored by other agencies sometimes. And sometimes they've just been resort or facilities that have been built at universities outside of our network. And so what's going to happen is NHERI itself will have a solicitation that should come out in the next month or so that opens up for anybody with an experimental facility to apply to become part of the network. And the network, what it does is helps to provide funding for operations and maintenance, right? But the facility itself, the capital has to already be there. So the ones that are sponsored by other federal agencies, I have no idea when they're going to be renewed and how they're changing. But the ones, excuse me, I'm sorry. Oh, allergies are so bad in San Antonio right now. Uh, the ones that are at individual universities that aren't currently part of the network, well, they haven't had those kinds of resources in the past. So this may enable them to not only open themselves up to get more people involved and have discounted rates on using their facilities, because if you're using NSF, that's funding, that's what you get. But also help to sustain them in a more well, sustainable way. Help to support them in a more sustainable way, I should say. Did that
Thank you.
answer your question, Richard?
It did, thanks.
And I'm going to find that fire facility and I will send it to if you want to put your email in the chat, I can do that to you for you.
Sure, sure. Um, Actually, I have a question for you and Robin. I'm not sure if I've ever heard an answer to this one, but
Okay.
so you two are both at UTSA, um,
Hmm.
and you guys, the NCO is in Purdue. So how did that work out? Is that just, I didn't understand that part.
Oh yeah, sure. So there are many grants that are written out there where the team who's on the grant is made up of individuals from multiple different universities, especially when you get to larger grants. And so early on, Julio pulled me in as a team member, a co-PI, with to write this grant and to become a part of NHERI and to lead with the network coordination office. And Robin was part of our team here. And so the PI, the award goes to Purdue, but we are a subcontract to Purdue. And that's the way a lot of larger federally funded awards will act. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's why, there's a lot of that when you're developing a proposal and trying to decide, do I have the expertise to do this? I want to do this big project. My expertise, for example, in my case, is in reinforced concrete response to large wind or earthquake events. Okay. But I might be interested in doing something that's broader than that. Maybe I need to bring in a social scientist. Maybe I need to bring in somebody who has I have a lot of seismic expertise, but maybe the wind piece is, the loading piece is not as well known to me. So when I'm building my proposal, I will consider, do I have someone here at UTSA that can fill that role, or do I need to look at a colleague that I've made at another university and pull them into that project? And so that's why the networking you do, getting involved in things like this, the Graduate Student Council, going to conferences and being on committees, getting to know people around the country in different areas is so critical, because when you work with a team on a project, you want to have a trusting relationship. And it's hard to do that unless you've gotten to know them in more than just an email. Maybe you're having Zoom meetings regularly or not. It's interesting when COVID really hit, and we were really moving online and so on. Our team had been distributed for 5 years already, so we'd been working on Zoom naturally every other week, and it was just something we did. And I think that happens a lot with research teams. They're kind of ahead on some of the communication technologies because we have to find a way to be efficient and make sure that we are staying in touch and building that trust and building that relationship all along so that you work seamlessly together. Sorry, that's my soapbox. I'll get off of it now.
Does anyone else have any more questions? I'm also going to share my screen and put Dr. Browning's email up there. So if you are shy to ask a question, feel free to email her.
Absolutely. I check my email almost obsessively, and I will absolutely get back to you. But Richard, I have yours down here, so I will definitely get back to you.
Oh, thanks, Robin, for also putting it in chat.
All right.
I think if we don't have any questions, thank you so much for coming. And we'll have a few minutes to transition into our next meeting.
Oh, it's been my
Robin,
pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.